First of all, a big congratulations. Your book is coming out when?
May 14th.
Okay, and tell me what the title of the book is?
Bitten, The Secret History of Lyme Disease and Biological Weapons.
Okay, now you put all those words into one sentence, which is kind of incredible because, as you'll recall, we worked together for maybe 5 years, and we were never able to sort of publicly put those words together. Lyme disease and biological weapons, and you've done it, or you've done a lot of it.
It is an outrageous claim, so one of the reasons I took 5 years before I published anything was I wanted to make sure the evidence was rock solid, there was science behind it.
What was the smoking gun that you uncovered in your research? You talk about the Swiss agent as the smoking gun. What did you mean by that?
So when Willie was getting close to death, he had a bunch of his research files in his garage in Hamilton, Montana, and he wanted them archived for posterity. And there was a lot of his early work from Fort Detrick, which was headquarters of the biological weapons program in the U.S. for decades. And in there, I saw, that he was directly involved in the bioweapons program for 2 decades, and he spent quite a bit of time in Fort Detrick. And then I found a lot of his original lab work from the Lyme discovery that wasn't in the National Archives in the Willy Burgdorfer papers that just showed that there was this other organism at ground zero of the Lyme disease outbreak that was never reported in any medical journals or discovery articles. And it was like, what is that? It was a rickettsial, which is a little bacterium that's, there's many species, subspecies of rickettsials, but they're sort of halfway between a bacteria and a virus, and they're so small and they hide inside of cells, living cells, so they're not easy to test for or see unless you were an expert like Willie. And what he noted in his original lab books is that almost every tick and original Lyme patient had those rickettsials in them, which seemed like it would be an important finding, but it was never reported.
You'll remember the first time that you met Willy Burgdorfer, and it was the same time I met him as well. We went to Montana, and we filmed him for Under Our Skin. At the end of the interview, you also remember that he said, what did he say?
I didn't tell you everything, with sort of a wry smile.
What do you think he didn't tell us? What's the basic thing you think he didn't tell us after now the work that you've done?
I think he suspected that the whole Lyme outbreak was a bioweapons accident. I mean, he said it to other people, other friends of his, in little bread crumbs worth of explanation. But he was afraid to talk about it. I think, maybe he didn't so much as discover Lyme disease as recognized it from his 20 years working for the bioweapons program.
Willie has often been seen as a hero in the Lyme disease community. He was the person who at last discovered what caused the illness. The pathogen is named after him. He also was somewhat outspoken about governmental inaction with the Lyme disease epidemic. How do you think your work now changes the way Willy Burgdorfer will be remembered and should be remembered? You actually said that what he did constituted a crime against humanity.
If we had known about the complexity of this outbreak earlier, then there would have been more research, on the multitude of pathogens that all of a sudden appeared around Long Island and Lyme, Connecticut in the late 1960s. But instead, we sort of narrowed our focus too early just on the Lyme disease spirochete.
The fact that we call Lyme disease just a disease caused by the pathogen Borrelia burgdorferi, do you see that as in some way covering up the crime against humanity?
I wasn't able to find direct evidence on a government cover-up, but certainly, like you and I, even as we first started investigating Lyme disease, the government was acting very strangely about this disease. And now that I'm inside Stanford, it's like in no other disease do the researchers and the CDC act like this.
Do you think that in some way ignoring the other possible pathogens like the Swiss agent, like that rickettsia, is a way to avoid the possibility of identifying or bringing us closer to identifying something that would expose the bioweapons program?
You know, I think in a way maybe the Lyme spirochete was a misdirection from the government. Oh, we'll just say that a couple weeks of doxycycline cures it, and then in most cases that kills rickettsials. And that way we won't have people for months to years on antibiotics.
Do you think that the pathogen that was engineered or re-engineered as a bioweapon was actually Borrelia burgdorferi, or was maybe the Swiss agent or some other cocktail that was created in the lab?
So the experiments that I know about is Willie was mixing various pathogens in ticks, and they were dropping infected ticks, at least we know on Cuba. I suspect what happened, ticks, which are very resourceful and sneaky, you know, they were probably shipping some ticks someplace, and maybe they got out around the Long Island area, and they had bad stuff in them. One reason I wanted to publish this book is to say we were designing these chronically incapacitating weapons. So don't say it can't happen. It can happen. There's a whole lot of research that shows it can happen. It's just all of it's classified. And I would say that was the thing that really struck me about tick-borne diseases is when we started our film, we realized people were really secretive. And it's because ticks were part of the bioweapons program from the very beginning, right after World War II.
Okay, so, but when you said they knew that antibiotics wouldn't work, because there was virus in it, or because it was just a strain of bacteria that couldn't be eradicated by antibiotics?
You know, if I just read the tea leaves of what Willie told me and looking through his lab notes, I think they were experimenting with an incapacitating, not lethal, mix of a rickettsial and of a virus. So I would suspect that they mixed Rickettsia montana and Colorado tick fever virus, and that's the thing that they were trying to cover up, and they called it, well, it doesn't have a name, you know, but it tested positive against Rickettsia, the Swiss agent they found in Switzerland, which is now called Rickettsia helvetica.
How do you think your book will affect the patient population, people who are afflicted with Lyme disease?
I actually worry about it because, as you know, they're very downtrodden and frustrated and tired and just desperate for help. So, you know, initial responses as it's starting to leak out that the book's going to be here is like a lot of the Lyme people say, I knew it, you know, because it's the only thing that makes sense, the way the government's treating the patients and the disease, you know. But I worry that some people are so sick that they'll get angry and I just, some could get violent. So I worry about that. And that's part of like what you know, your decision as a journalist, if you open up Pandora's box, what are going to be the repercussions that you can't control?
Yes, and that was I guess Willie's question in some way too, opening up Pandora's box. This is the result of opening a Pandora's box, which is the box of bioweapons and stealth pathogens coming back to bite us.
Right.
And interestingly, your book is called Bitten. We've been bitten.